The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, a conversation with local Holocaust survivor Wolfgang Helpap about his newly published memoir, The Holocaust and Beyond, from the boy who escaped the Nazis. Tucson has long had a good relationship with the Hollywood movie industry, but where did that begin? Local historian and Arizona Daily Star columnist David Layton shares the story of Nick C. Hall. And Stories That Soar brings us a song by Isaiah, a middle schooler who's been described as a consummate optimist. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. Between 1941 and 1945, Germany's Nazi regime murdered 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. Of the 6 million Jews who were victims of the genocide known as the Holocaust, an estimated 1.5 million were children. Against all odds, some of them survived. Recently, Alicia Vasquez had the privilege of talking with local Holocaust survivor Wolfgang Helpap about his newly published memoir, The Holocaust and Beyond, from the boy who escaped the Nazis. It recounts in great detail his journey of fleeing Nazi persecution during World War II, later being present for the founding of the State of Israel, and eventually making his new life in the United States. Previously, Helpap has shared his story through interviews and public speaking, so it was a different experience for him to write a book for future generations. Be aware that this story does contain descriptions of the attempted genocide of the Jewish people and may not be suitable for all listeners.
I'd love to start by asking, what inspired you to write a book?
I've been planning it already for quite a few years because before that, my son Michael was in the Army. He wanted to actually write it for me, but then he came back and, well, he died, so that's the bad thing that I had to take, and I ghostwrite.
And how was the experience of putting your story into words? How was that different than going on a camera and interviewing or going on a radio show and interviewing, telling it verbally? How was the experience different?
Yeah, you're right. All this happened 75 years ago. So you got to remember a lot of details, But I looked it up and I researched a lot to make sure that I get it down in writing and give it to the guy that actually edited the book.
Right, and that's also something I was very curious about because, so much happened and so much time has passed since. I was wondering how you managed to keep all of this so accurately in your mind. Did you also keep a diary?
Well, I did have papers that from that time, yes, but not a diary really, but just papers, that like for instance, when I was born and so on, and what my mother wrote down, and she made a complete. And also, we went back to Berlin in 2016, and I went to the archives over there. And the Nazis, they keep pretty good records of what happened, My records there in the archives were pretty about 1 inch, 2 inches thick. A lot of details and everything. And also the ID card that I got from the archives in Berlin. So that was very reminding me a lot of the details, especially in the orphanage,
Was there anything surprising that you found out when acquiring all this information?
Yeah, the surprising part was, remember, when I escaped, I had to remember exactly how many times we thought about it, and we figured that maybe we get a chance, somehow. So they're in the archives. The SS really, they put my escape down.
So you mentioned your mother also had a lot of documents too. In the book, it's clear that she was such a huge part of getting you through that terrible time, and also after, when you both eventually made your way to Israel and then the United States. What is something you would want the audience to know about your mother?
Yeah. Well, my mother was a very brave woman. I mean, she did went through all these hard times with me, and she had to take a lot of bad times from the Nazis, because also from her own family, because this was more or less a Christian family that she's from. And now she got into this. She was very courageous, and she always stuck with me. And like I said, she even came here to America, and I was happy with having her here in my house, even when I was married and had my boys. And she was still living with us, and we took care of her.
You've returned to Germany several times after the war. How was that experience after, the last time being in your hometown, Berlin? How did it feel to return?
The first time I returned was, of course, as a soldier. They drafted me here and then assigned me to Germany. I was still young, more or less, and we were about 6 to 10 Jewish soldiers in our group. In Frankfurt, we felt like taking kind of a revenge. We started some fights even with some people that were over 30 years old, because they're the ones who probably were involved in the Nazi regime. So, yeah, it was surprising that the army sent me right back to Germany.
How has your experience during that time shaped the way you handle a crisis or trials that have happened since?
The thing is, in that age, the third is to survive, stay alive. You invent or find out a lot of ways to do that, Especially on the run, you always detect if there's any danger that you get, that somebody will detect you or see you. Learn to be pretty good at that, It's a matter of survival, especially in those times. You felt like everybody is hating you and trying to do harm to you, Besides that, was also when the bombing started, the bomb building pretty hard. And so you could not, as a kid, I was with my uncle for a while, but I could not go into any shelters and stuff, afraid that they recognize me or know me or whatever. So anyway, I was always scared. That's all I remember really as a child, that I was always shivering and scared. Scared feeling as a kid, that's very bad.
Have you found a sense of peace, and did you reach a point in your life where you were able to kind of put the hypervigilance behind you and breathe?
Yeah, again, childhood is bad, but when you start growing up, there are other phases in your life that you have to meet. I suppose that sometimes these bad times that I experienced as a kid got me later on in life too. That sometimes afraid of bad people, I guess. Even in the army, that you get superiors and you're scared of them. There might have been a little bit transmission, yes.
Since your mother was Christian and your father was Jewish, spiritually, how do you identify? Did you identify more with a Christian upbringing?
No, my mother, of course, came from an evangelical Christian family, but since the Nazis already declared me full Jewish, I felt more to the Jewish side of what the Jews have to go through, and that in the Nazis trying to eliminate a complete race, I identified a lot more with the Jewish side of it.
As a Jewish man who survived something horrific, what does the state of Israel mean to you?
In 1948, I felt completely identified with the state of Israel, that they deserved to have their own country, And I kind of thought about the hard times that the Nazis gave me, and I realized that the Jews need a country, they need a state, they need to fight for their own. And so I went and volunteered to be as part of it.
Wolfgang Hellpap's memoir, The Holocaust and Beyond, From the Boy Who Escaped the Nazis, is available for purchase at the Tucson Jewish Museum and Holocaust Center and on Amazon.com. There's a link on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org. From both an economic and a cultural perspective, Tucson's long history with the film industry has brought inestimable rewards. But where and when did this connection begin? It's writer David Layton's job to explore the facts behind local legends for his monthly Street Smarts column in the Arizona Daily Star. Next, Layton tells us about the rarely talked about life of the first person to make a real effort to bring stars to Tucson.
So Nixie Hall arrives in Tucson in 1934 to manage the prestigious Santa Rita Hotel on Broadway and Scott Avenue. How he came up with the idea that Tucson would be great for Hollywood Westerns, I'm not sure. Could have been past movies that had been filmed here, or just he conceived the idea and visited ranches and stuff like that.
He started putting things in place at the hotel and sort of advertising it as a place where Hollywood might be interested in coming to stay.
He made several trips to Hollywood, and I think part to drum up some business. And you remember this is 1934, middle of the Great Depression. It may have just come about as a way to get people to stay at his hotel originally, but he did take trips out to Hollywood, visited with Hollywood studios, and basically advertised, hey, you got this great place called Tucson in southern Arizona that you could come out and film and make it really authentic, rather than the back lots of studios in Hollywood, California.
Where they would have like a 2D cactus.
Right. You could get the real deal here in Tucson. And I think that was the appeal is, hey, we can go out there. It's inexpensive. Stay at this guy's hotel who's going to take care of us. And he was a good salesman, I think, and that's what kind of drew them in there. And I think he realized that Tucson was in a desperate situation. Tucson was hit hard by the Great Depression. A lot of people out of work. A lot of people needed that, and that was a way he could help the community and also, help fill the rooms at his hotel. And he loved being around celebrities, and that was his personality.
Yeah, he wanted a busy lobby that would attract attention. And you mentioned he made a couple of business ploys that I think are very clever and ahead of their time. The first being that he hired a photographer to be on staff at the Santa Rita, and that he also offered his guests from Hollywood a choice of either privacy or publicity for their visits.
Yeah, he's known to have hired photographers, not only for his hotel, but they'd also go around and take pictures of ranches and scenery out there just so he could kind of show the people in Hollywood, hey, this is where you could film. These are the ranches and stuff like that you could go to there. He definitely catered to Hollywood. He definitely knew how to take care of celebrities, and that, if they wanted some publicity, he could make sure he got it.
So it seems like Hall's ambitions kind of came together for the filming of a movie that was released in 1936 called The Gay Desperado. And I have to tell you, this plot description is hilarious. It's a musical comedy about a Mexican bandit who kidnaps an opera singer to force him to join his group of outlaws. And it had Ida Lupino and Leo Carrillo and an opera singer of the era, Nino Martini, who were all big celebrities to come down to the old Pueblo.
Well, and this is the first known big production that he did or was involved in. Mary Pickford, the well-known early silent film actress, and Jesse Lasky, who worked in production in Hollywood for many, many years, had formed a recent production company. And he took advantage of that, knowing that they were new and they were looking for spots. And so he went out and talked to them, convinced them they needed to film this movie here in Tucson. It kind of got the ball rolling. They filmed this movie. He did whatever he could to help them, utilize the hotel in any way he could. He knew he had to get somebody out here. He knew he had to get someone big. And then they could go back to Hollywood, tell everybody else about, hey, we went and filmed. And this guy's hotel is great. Basically word of mouth advertising.
Yeah, a couple of years later, a big production was called Let Freedom Ring, which was about laying the railroad across our state from Red Rock to Ajo in this case. And it says here that the film premiered in 1938 at the Fox Tucson Theater. So that shows that Hall wasn't necessarily being greedy about this. He saw the benefits of the film industry being in Tucson could apply to many different businesses.
Right, and that was one of the things that made him so beloved in Tucson is he didn't just keep all the wealth for himself. I mean, he spread it out. He talked to tons of different little businesses in Tucson, get them to cater to Hollywood. Everyone was able to benefit. In this particular film, the stars didn't actually come to Tucson. They were actually body doubles that basically sat in for them, probably because they didn't want to come out in 100-degree temperatures. But he was able to, again, provide a lot of work for Tucsonans that just needed even 2, 3, 4 days of filming with lunch provided during the Great Depression was quite a bit of help.
Yeah, and according to your article, $3.50 plus lunch. I would do something for those rates.
It may take me a little more money to convince me, but that was good money during the Great Depression.
You've always been a tough negotiator.
Exactly.
Tell us about 1940 and the movie that was shot here that really made a difference in Tucson's future.
Well, so in 1940, the movie that was filmed was called Arizona. It starred Jean Arthur and William Holden. The result of this was actually the creation of what's called Old Tucson Studios today. What happened was Nick C. Hall got wind that they were going to make this movie, which was about Tucson. It was based on the book Arizona by Clarence Buddington Keelan. He goes out to Columbia Pictures, convinces them, hey, you need to film this movie out here. Old Tucson still has some of those original buildings when you walk right in, but a lot of buildings are no longer there. But it was what Tucson looked like during the Civil War. It's pretty much all adobe, a little bit of wood, very authentic, based largely on the 1862 map of Tucson.
And in addition to the hiring and the work that it provided for Tucsonans, it also provided work for the indigenous craftsmen who knew how to make the adobe bricks and other essentials for building the set. So it really seemed like a boon to the entire community when that movie was shot and when Old Tucson was built.
Yeah, other than a small amount of leadership that came from Columbia Pictures, most of the work was done by local people, including the Tono Atam.
And you write that the cast and the crew of the movie Arizona decided to pay tribute to Nick Hall and his involvement in making that film happen.
Yeah, in 1940, right before filming began, or maybe just a few days into filming, the cast actually elected Nick C. Hall mayor of Old Tucson. Now, this was half in jest and half serious. Now, 2 months later, the governor of Arizona at the time officially named him the honorary mayor of Old Tucson. So you had two different entities naming him mayor of Old Tucson.
But Old Tucson as a tourist attraction didn't really exist yet. Tell us about what happened in 1946 and what that meant for the future of the location.
So originally when Columbia Pictures got a hold of the land to build Old Tucson Studios, they did it on a 5-year lease. The 5-year lease expired around 1946. Now, not much had been going on in Old Tucson. Lots of people visited it. It was a tourist attraction, but not in the same sense it is today. Like, people would just randomly show up, go, oh, this is where that movie was filmed. So the Pima County Board of Supervisors decided in 1946 to allow the Junior Chamber of Commerce to take over the site kind of as more of an official tourist attraction. So they were actually charging money for people to visit. They were rebuilding the adobe buildings. So after the Junior Chamber of Commerce took over, they decided that they were going to elect a mayor, a town council, sheriff, etc. They chose one of their own and essentially displaced Nick C. Hall as the mayor of Old Tucson.
So what is the legacy of Nick Hall today, though? If you go to Old Tucson, can you find any recognition of his contributions?
As of right now, there are no recognitions of Nick C. Hall. But I have been working with Old Tucson Studios to get a building there named in his honor. So they've agreed to do the Ramada there and rename it the Nick C. Hall Ramada. I believe also they're going to make some space possibly in their museum or someplace else, to have just a small little museum about his life. I mean, everybody knows Robert Shelton and the great work he's done in the late 50s and onward to really make it the amusement park and film studios today. But without Nixie Hall in the first place, there wouldn't be an Old Tucson Zoos.
What was your takeaway from doing the research and writing this article?
I think probably the main thing I got out of doing this research was how many people that have done great things for Tucson we don't even know about. I was researching the Rito racetrack a couple years ago, and I came across a race known as the Nixie Hall Stake. I was like, wow, I don't know who that is. You know, the other races were in honors of mayors and stuff that people I knew, and that's what actually started me researching his life, was why would they name a race after this guy? For the people here in Tucson during the Great Depression, he was a godsend. I mean, he provided work when there was no work. He brought in, single-handedly, sometimes spending his own money to take trips out there. If the owner of the hotel wouldn't pay for it, he would then pay for it himself to go out to Hollywood. So I think for me, the takeaway was there's people out there that have done great things for Tucson that have been long forgotten. And I think it's important that we honor this guy with the building at Old Tucson Studios, with some space in the museum, as a thank you for his contributions.
Following his research, David Layton and former Tucson City Council person Steve Kozachik have been in talks with Old Tucson Studios to rename the Stagecoach Depot Ramada in honor of Nixie Hall. There will likely be a ribbon-cutting ceremony this September. Listeners can visit Tucson.com to read many more articles that David Layton has written for his Street Smarts column, published the first Monday of every month in the Arizona Daily Star. When young writers submit their stories to Literacy Connect's Magic Box Story Portal, they get the opportunity to hear their work performed by Stories That Soar, a group of multi-talented professional performers. The Stories That Soar team is on a mission to amplify youth voices and help young writers realize the power and potential of bringing their stories to life across all mediums. Isaiah has been part of the Literacy Connect's Youth Center since he was in 6th grade. And now, as he is entering high school, he's volunteering as a mentor. His friend Dallas describes Isaiah as a consummate optimist. And next we'll hear a song he wrote to express himself and to spread love, joy, and hope.
Yo, what up? My name's Isaiah, and I'm here to tell you about all the things in life that can make it profound. Just turn those rainy days into sunny heat rays, and no matter the cost, I will make sure that you don't sway. Sometimes you need a breather, but hey, that's okay, cause it's your own life, so you don't need to obey. Spitting all this fire to make sure you don't retire. Ain't no need to make every single thing ever so dire. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Drown out all your doubts. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Drown out all your doubts. Breathe in and breathe out. After the meditation break, you must be confused. Let's must be throwing punches that just go like boom, boom. Just let me give some steps that'll lead to your success. And by the end of this song, I know you'll be leading with finesse. Step 1, put those lips to work and give a big smile. Releases dopamine, that'll make it worth your while. Step 2, kindness is contagious, spread it all around. Giving people smiles will give you a rebound. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Drown out all your doubts. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Drown out all your doubts. Breathe in and breathe out. And in the last and final step, you gotta love yourself. Cause love is an important thing that makes the world go round. And before that I go, I just wanna let y'all know that in this big wide world, you don't have to stay up curled. Love can be overwhelming, but without it you won't grow. You grow and learn from your mistakes, and that really shows. I love you all a lot, and that's all it's about. And with that ending message, Isaiah is out.
That was Walking on Air, written and performed by Isaiah, who graduated from Amphi Middle School. Go Pirates! It was produced by Literacy Connect's Theater and Film Camp. Aspiring student-age writers can submit their stories, poems, and songs to the Magic Box Story Portal now at literacyconnects.org. And tune in for more Stories That Soar every month on Arizona Spotlight. Thank you for listening. This show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Alicia Vasquez. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.